Well, good morning, everybody. How are we today? Excellent. Belly's getting full, plenty of coffee. 2 coffee stations. I learned that earlier when this one was a little bit low. This one's over here too, so if you need to keep filling up, keep filling up. Well, I hope that everybody had a wonderful day yesterday and a wonderful evening exploring Dubuque and seeing everything there is to see. We're so excited to have you here. My name is Brad Kavanaugh, and I serve as the mayor here in Dubuque, and I'm going to be your I'll be your MC, I guess, for the 2 keynote speakers today. So you get a little bit of me in the morning and a little bit later. I want to make sure that I say that on behalf of my city council colleagues and the city staff and all of our sponsors, it really is an honor to welcome you here to the Growing Sustainable Communities Conference. We are very excited to have everyone here for this great couple of days. So in late November, I had the opportunity to travel with Gina Bell, whom I'm sure a lot of you have met, to Dubai to participate in COP28 with a, thank you. I was surprised to get the invitation, but it was an honor. And we were there with a delegation of global mayors, and our focus during this time was local climate action. And I had a pretty big takeaway from this experience that I had there. And it was really that we as cities need to take big, bold, ambitious actions if we're really going to do something about the problems that we face. We have to translate goals into implementable policies and plans and set a course for net zero in a nature-positive world. Cities are leading this effort globally and helping their respective national governments reach the intended goal. Municipal governments, colleges, businesses, those of us in this room are key to addressing climate change and emissions reduction. Dubuque has long focused on building a sustainable and resilient community, and we look forward to another day of sharing what we've learned and learning and continuing to grow from you. We invite you to become our partners in achieving more sustainable communities and in ensuring that we are leaving a sustainable legacy for generations to come. Next, I want to make sure that I take a moment to express our gratitude to our presenting sponsor, Crescent Electric Supply Company. Let's give them a hand, please. Crescent has been a long-time supporter of this conference, and we truly thank them for that. I'd also like to thank our city staff, our staff from Travel Dubuque, Grand River Center staff for making this event possible. So before we proceed, I also want to make sure that we thank our sponsors for this event. So our gold sponsors are AARP Iowa, Alliant Energy, Black Hills Energy, and Visit Brookings. Our bronze sponsors are Iowa Waste Reduction Center, Shive Hattery, and the University of Wisconsin Sustainable Management Certificates and Degree Program. I also want to thank workshop sponsors and exhibitors and the great session speakers from yesterday and coming up yet today. Without everyone there, this conference would not be possible, so thank you. And it is now my great pleasure to introduce Andre Henry. Andre is a musician, an activist, an author, and in the short time that I've gotten to know him, a wonderful person, I can tell right off the bat. From the shadows of the Confederate Mount Rushmore in Stone Mountain, Georgia, just miles outside the civil rights capital of Atlanta, comes a creative truth teller, equipped with revolutionary insight, fierce vulnerability, and conscious, soulful, cinematic pop anthems. Andre was studying theology when the killing of Philando Castile by the Minneapolis Police Department triggered an awakening that caused him to cut ties with his evangelical faith and begin speaking out against racial violence, declaring the good news that it doesn't have to be this way. For several months, he lugged a 100-pound boulder around Los Angeles to visually express how anti-black racism burdens the black psyche. His community organizing and writing for racial justice have made him a trusted global voice on nonviolent struggle for social progress. He recounts his journey into the racial justice movement in his best-selling memoir-manifesto, All the White Friends I Couldn't Keep. Andre is a graduate of 1500 Sound Academy in Inglewood, California. He's also the inaugural recipient of the Reach Out and Touch Award in honor of his late mentor and legendary singer-songwriter Nick Ashford from the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers Foundation. His work has been featured in The Nation, The New Yorker, New York's Lincoln Center, the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts in Washington, D.C., and Super Bowl 56. Whether he's marching the streets with local activists, writing his books, or performing his music, Andre is here to speak truth, spread joy, and shift culture through everything he creates. So please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Andre Henry, to the stage.
I keep looking at this guitar like I feel like I should sing something. But I think I figured out how I'm gonna do this. I'll sing you a song on the condition that you sing with me. Deal? Okay. Here's your part. Na na na, na na na, na na na, na na na. You sing na na na. Very good. Na na na. Oh, we going on the road. Keep it going. Na na na, na na na. Oh, this is gonna be so good. Keep it going, huh? You know that feeling, bones feel heavy, got a chest too tight for a deep inhale when the race of life is moving past you on your knees, facing hands when your head feels light, breathing air with the world on fire. Thoughts and prayers and lies fly by like trash on the breeze. There's a hope I know that will always be. That the powerful tremble when they hear the beat of some charged up people marching on these streets, singing songs of freedom, singing songs of peace. Oh, remember, people, oh, remember, we are tomorrow makers, standing in our power. We are the tomorrow makers, tomorrow makers. Wait, which microphone am I using? This one? We are tomorrow makers. No, our moment is now. We are the tomorrow makers, tomorrow makers. No one can stop us now. Now listen very closely to this. I spend a lot of time on my lyrics and people don't always listen, but I want you to hear this. You know that game we play, Simon says, well, the game don't work when we disobey, and the powers that shouldn't be know it all too well. They're just hoping we would all forget. That's why the powerful tremble when they hear the beat of some charged up people marching on these streets, singing songs of freedom, singing songs of peace. Oh, remember, people, oh, remember, we are tomorrow makers, standing in our power. We are the tomorrow makers, tomorrow makers. We are tomorrow makers. Our moment is now. We are the tomorrow makers, tomorrow makers. When heroes take their capes down to the goodwill, and champions trade the chariots for a priest, When kings join hands and dance around the revolution's ashes, remember they could never slay a phoenix. You can't throw revolution in a jail cell. A spirit can be handcuffed or imprisoned. The olden days are gone, now we're holding the baton. If we don't fight for us, nobody will. But if we dare to fight, we dare to win. That's why the powerful tremble when they hear the beat of some charged up people marching on these streets, singing songs of freedom, singing songs of peace. Oh, remember, people, oh, remember. Oh, remember, people, oh, remember. Oh, remember, people, oh, remember. I am so honored and honestly humbled to be here this morning. But I'm really thrilled to share this message with you. And it's kind of the same message in that song that I just sang about being tomorrow makers. That song is about you. If I could, the reason why I'm so excited about it this morning is because this is the message that if someone said, Andre, they turn on the TVs all over the world, Andre, you have 20 minutes. You can tell the world anything. This is the thing that I would want the world to know. So I'm thrilled to share it with you about the fact that we are tomorrow makers. You are tomorrow makers. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today, that you are a tomorrow maker and the hidden power of people power. This comes from my own story. Before that morning, I had never seen anyone bleed to death. But that morning, July 6, 2016, I saw a young black man by the name of Philando Castile bleed to death in front of his girlfriend and their 4-year-old daughter on Facebook Live. I was distressed at seeing this. I didn't want to see the video, first off. We had seen so many videos like this over the years. It wasn't because it was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. It's because there were so many stories like this. And I remember sitting at my laptop and feeling so much rage in my body. I have a friend that said that depression is when rage turns inward, when it doesn't have anywhere to go. And that's exactly what happened over the next few weeks. I lost my appetite. I couldn't focus on work or school. All I could think about was Philando Castile's 4-year-old daughter in the back of that car, trying to calm her mother down, saying, I don't want for us to get shooted. I didn't know what to do. I didn't understand what people meant when they said systemic in systemic. I didn't understand the systemic in systemic racism. And I didn't know how to fight against a system of oppression. A system of oppression centuries long, centuries old, deeply entrenched, globally pervasive, none of that. So I made 3 commitments around that time. I would learn everything that I could about how this system of racism worked. Hello. I would learn about how people have successfully worked against it before. How have they changed it before? And I would find some way to invest my body in the struggle for systemic change. You heard in my introduction that one of those things that I ended up finding to do was lugging a 100-pound granite boulder around Los Angeles with me everywhere that I went, to show people This is what it feels like to be black in this country for me. When I come into work, when I come into class, when I'm on the phone, when I go on a date or whatever, I don't just forget about the microaggressions, the police killings, all those kinds of things. I lug that into the room with me. But I'm not going to talk about that as much today as I will about the second commitment, or the first two really, is study. I began to read voraciously. Anything that I could find about how ordinary people work together to change the world, that was just, those books right there are just my books for the summer of 2018. Anything that I could find about how ordinary people have worked together to change the world, I had to get my hands on it. I had to read it. I had to know it. And what I found is an overarching lesson that filled me with so much hope that I've dedicated my life to telling people about it. It's a lesson about power. That history is not a story that's happening to us, but one that we're writing together. In my search for the answer of how do ordinary people work together to change the world, I found story after story of ordinary, organized, outraged people confronting dictatorships and winning, breaking down apartheids, revolutionizing their societies, taking on major corporations and making them change their policies. And one of my favorite stories comes out of Berlin in 1943. It is the winter of 1943 in Berlin, and the Nazis have just abducted a few hundred Jewish men. And they're holding them in this detention center on the Rosenstrasse. And their wives, who are German, end up coming down to this detention center and demanding that the Nazis give their husbands back. As you might imagine, they did not after the first request. And so this standoff begins to happen where the women are demanding, give us back our husbands, and the Nazis try to ignore them, the Nazis shoo them away, but that crowd over the course of days begins to grow into the hundreds, until eventually the Nazis turn their guns on this crowd of unarmed women and say, if you do not disperse right now, we will open fire. But that incenses the crowd all the more. Now these women begin to look their assailants in the face and yell, chant, murderers. Until eventually the Nazis let their husbands go. I was dumbfounded by that story. Because when I say the word Nazi, most people think this is the worst kind of racist evil that we could imagine. But they let them go. And there's a principle, there's a story like that in so many of these. But before I move forward, I have to highlight that this is the only event of its kind under the Third Reich, where a group of Germans stood up to the Third Reich and said, we will not tolerate that, leaving us to wonder what would have happened if a whole nation had behaved like those women that day. It demonstrates a principle of power that undergirds all collective action. It's the same principle of power that undergirds the multitudes of Indians that walked down to the sea to collect their own salt against the British imperial laws that said that they were not supposed to do that. It's the same principle that underlies the Montgomery bus boycott. And to illustrate it, we're going to play a game. But before we do, let's talk about what power is. As you see on the screen behind me, Dr. King says, power is the ability to achieve a purpose. What is power? Okay. So we're going to play a game to illustrate how power in society works. You might have heard of it. It's called Simon Says. Now, sometimes I'll go places and they've never heard of Simon Says. So in case you have not, it's very simple. All you have to do is whatever Simon says. I'm going to be Simon, and let's begin to play right now. Simon says, snap your fingers 3 times. Yeah, very good. Simon says, say your first name. Awesome. Simon says, stand up and pull your pants down. Okay, the game is called Simon Says. All you have to do is whatever Simon says. Simon says, stand up and pull your pants down. The name of the game is Simon Says. Okay, if power is the ability to achieve a purpose, who has the power in the game we just played? Simon does? Because Simon said, stand up and pull your pants down several times. And here you all are sitting here with your pants on. So who has the power in the game?
You always have the choose to give it up.
Exactly. The principle remains that the status quo is upheld by our participation in it. You stop doing what Simon says, and the game stops working. Gene Sharp, an iconic nonviolent scholar, put it like this. By themselves, rulers cannot collect taxes, enforce repressive laws and regulations, keep trains running on time, prepare national budgets, direct traffic, manage ports, print money, repair roads, keep markets supplied with food, make steel, build rockets, train the people in the army, issue postage stamps, or even milk a cow. People provide these services to the ruler through a variety of organizations and institutions. If people would stop providing these skills, the ruler could not rule. We know this to be true about how power works, because in any atrocity in history, we always ask the same question: where were all the good people? Now, Gene Sharp put it that way about rulers because Gene Sharp's thing was confronting dictatorships, but Simon doesn't always have to be a dictator. Simon can be just the way we do things around here. An outdated policy, culture, or a pervasive misconception. Right? But we know that this is true when we talk about power because we ask this question. Name any atrocity in history, the Holocaust, the Rwandan genocide, any war, anything that goes, we say, where were the good people? And when we ask that question, we are conceding that we know that, as I said before, history is not a story that's happening to us. It's one that we're writing together. We know that if the good people had intervened, if they had stood up, if they had stopped obeying Simon, if they had done something else, that would have written a new chapter. In fact, when we ask that question, we are tacitly saying that even their inaction was a part of writing that chapter of history. That's what I mean when I say that we are tomorrow makers. Even when we choose not to act, our inaction becomes a part of the story. Future generations will ask the same questions about us. If places like Miami and Los Angeles go underwater, if the droughts become more severe, and the weather too, they won't blame the president. They won't blame the mayor of Dubuque. They'll look at our entire generation and say, where were the good people? And they'll be right. They'll be right that we had the power to intervene, but we lacked something. Was it the imagination to dream of better alternatives? Was it the political will to push harder for those alternatives? Was it the moral courage to stand up to the opposition to creating those changes? They'll be right that we had the power to do something, and for some reason or another, we didn't. And we cannot allow that to be our story. Alice Walker once said, the most common way that we give up our power is believing that we don't have any. And the future of humanity relies on overcoming that lie. To accept that I'm trying to make sure I make eye contact with every one of you. You are already a tomorrow maker. Every day you are making history, even if you choose to do nothing. You have the power to write a new chapter in Dubuque. And if you refuse to do so, your inactivity will also be a part of that story. So what will the next chapter be? Thank you. I believe there's supposed to be an interrogation now. We have a question over here. I also take comments, bribes, money, and threats.
Thank you for your presentation. That was really thoughtful.
It's my pleasure.
I'm wondering about symbols. And in the introduction, it was mentioned Stone Mountain.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, I've been to Stone Mountain. I'm curious what your thoughts are about Stone Mountain.
Sure. I did grow up in Stone Mountain, and I know quite a bit about the history of Stone Mountain. But my parents didn't, because my parents are from Jamaica. So I tell this story in the beginning of my book about how my mother used to always take us to Stone Mountain for the laser show. But my mother didn't really understand Confederate history. So she didn't really understand that Stone Mountain is the place where the Ku Klux Klan was reborn. Because they went away for a while. And I think it was the civil rights movement. I can't remember exactly why. But a Methodist preacher, some Confederate veterans, went to the top of Stone Mountain around Thanksgiving in the early 1900s, and they set up an altar. And they laid down a sword and a Bible, and they pledged allegiance to the invisible empire. And that is how the Ku Klux Klan was reborn on Stone Mountain. That carving on Stone Mountain is the largest bas relief carving in the world. Not in the United States, not in the South, in the entire world, depicting Jefferson Davis, I think it's Stonewall Jackson. I'm not sure exactly, but it's Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee, and Stonewall Jackson on horseback. That project was funded by the Daughters of the Confederacy in direct response to civil rights progress, to racial progress. We didn't know all that history, right? And most people in Stone Mountain don't know that history because it's nowhere listed in Stone Mountain Park, which allows people in Stone Mountain to believe that we've made more progress than we have, not just because the monument is there, but because it kind of mirrors how we handle or how we have handled racism up until 2020, right? Is that monument means something, right? That's why you asked about symbols, right? It means something. It's consequential, but no one wants to say that it is an icon to white supremacy. which means that we have to fight about taking it down. Am I being clear? Do you get what I'm saying? That if we're fighting to take the symbol of white supremacy down, maybe we are not actually committed to confronting white supremacy. Does that make sense? And so that's how I feel about growing up in Stone Mountain, that when I tried to name the ways that I was othered as a black person in Stone Mountain, no one wanted to hear it. But that experience of being black in Stone Mountain is just as big as that monument. Questions, comments, bribes, money, threats? What am I reading now? Right now, I am reading a book called Resilient by Dr. Rick Hansen. And it covers 12 inner strengths for creating a core of well-being. It's very important, especially for marginalized and oppressed people, because we live in a system that is built on cruelty, on a logic of cruelty. And so when you are experiencing different types of othering on a regular basis, you know, it actually weathers your body. that kind of stress actually causes body cells to unravel and for body cells to age faster, which is why you have higher rates of mortality, part of why you have higher rates of mortality among black and brown people. So I realized that not only that, but there's all this research now about how not only does the racial stress alone weather your body, but actually fighting against systemic racism also weathers your body. And so I was like, I better save my life here and learn more about well-being. So that's what I'm reading right now. I also just finished a wonderful book. I think it's the best book about anti-racism that I've read in a long time. It's called What is Anti-Racism and Why It Means Anti-Capitalism. It's a very good book, and it talks about the constructing of the neoliberal order of racism, because racism does evolve. You know, we're not still dealing with chattel slavery racism. And so if racism evolves, then we have to also, our understanding of it has to evolve. And so that's what I really appreciate about that book. Yes?
Can you speak, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure.
Can you speak a little bit more about your experience in Los Angeles with the 100-pound boulder? Was there like
Sure.
a defining conversation with any, like was there?
Hi everyone. I asked if he could speak a little bit more about his experience in Los Angeles carrying the 100-pound boulder, and if there was any, defining moments during that experience.
Okay, defining moments as in like while I was carrying it, something significant, something like that.
Like conversations with people, or just were there any examples of your experience?
This funny thing is that this question connects with your question, because most people just kind of ignored that I had a boulder behind me. Like it was totally normal. As though they had one themselves. Yeah, most people did not talk to me about, I maybe had 3 comments, maybe a little more, maybe like 5, in the course of 6 months of taking it everywhere. But at the time, remember this is before 2020, and so I think that a lot of people were still holding out to just ignore the to ignore racism, like the fundamental logic on which this system was built, to minimize it, to sweep it under the rug, to say, oh, no, like we freed the slaves.
Yeah. When you say 2020, do you mean George Floyd?
Yes, the killing of George Floyd, I think, has changed the way that we talk about racism or acknowledge it. I think that we have had a common sense shift to where people don't feel like they can just say it doesn't exist anymore. Maybe not. Maybe not. But I think that my battle up to 2020, up to 2020 was getting people to acknowledge that racism exists, right? And so I think my experience in 2016, 2017, lugging that boulder around reflected that, because most people were pretending that that boulder wasn't behind me. I did get a few dumb comments though. I also, lugging a boulder around wasn't the only thing that I did. I also had a jacket like this. I just bought this one. But the other one that I had, they say that a man should have at least one black suit jacket, and I did have one, but written all over it were the names of black civilians who've been killed by police. And on the back it says, "Stop killing us." And one day I was walking out of a church that I had been playing a piano at, and as I was walking out of the door, a white man reads me at the back of my jacket, puzzled. He goes, "Stop killing us." With laughter, huh? Comments like that. It was super odd. Yeah, I don't know why he thought it was a joke, or made a joke out of it. But that's what some people do when they're uncomfortable, right? Is when they're uncomfortable, they don't know what to say, how to interact with it. They don't realize being quiet is an option too. You don't have to say anything if you don't have something worthwhile to say. That really was. A lot of it was walking around with this boulder and most people ignoring it. And it was hard to miss because I was finishing up my degree at Fuller Seminary. So I remember the first place that I took that boulder was my beginning Greek class. And I'm like, it's on a wagon because it's 100 pounds. When I first got it, I couldn't lift it by myself. So it's on this platform, and I'm trying to get it through the door, and it's bang, it's getting it through the door. So it's I'm sure they saw it. That's all I'm saying. I know they saw it.
So how do we make it safe for people to acknowledge that they have power, or how do we encourage people to believe that they have power?
How do we encourage people to believe that they have power? That's such a great question, and I'm glad you asked it because I'm talking to a bunch of activists and revolutionaries, people who topple dictators and stuff like that later this week, and I'm going to tell them that's their job, is to help them understand that people have power. And the first thought that comes to mind is that it's contextual, right? Is I'm able to do it this way because Gina invited me to come speak at this conference, right? But this is not an option tomorrow for me, right? And so I do think that it depends on what are your gifts, what is your sphere of influence, what are your relationships like, right? Because if you're a parent, that probably looks one way with your children, right? I can't speak to it, I'm not a parent, so I'm not even gonna try to give an example. But I'm sure that if you are a parent, you could think of ways that, even little ways that you could help your children understand that they have agency, right? If you're a teacher, I'm sure that you have a sphere of influence in your classroom, right? And so I feel bad because I can't give a very specific answer, but I think that we have to take stock of what we have, right? Who is in our lives? What are those relationships like? Where's our sphere of influence? And really think through in your context, how can you use those things to empower people around you? I'm coming from a community organizing background, and so I really believe that for my colleagues in that space, that it's our job to make people empowered, right? If we as community organizers are not trying to work ourselves out of a job, then what are we doing? Because the idea is that the world has to change. And I'm not sure exactly how that, I get leery about giving people specific examples because it can be so contextual. Yes, sir.
Two questions. From the time that the first question is, what was the purpose of you carrying the boulder? Was it for others or was it for yourself? And the second question is, what kind of transformations did you see in yourself after you stopped carrying the boulder?
After I stopped. Okay, so who was it for is a great question. It's one that I was asked while I was doing it by a couple of mentors, right? And it's always interesting because when you do any kind of art, it's a performance, it's layered, right? So I wanted to show that this mental burden is with me everywhere I go. So in my head, I'm doing it for everyone that's gonna see me, right? But lugging that boulder around was very clarifying for me about my life's purpose, I have been making music since I was 9 years old. I wrote my first song when I was 8 in kindergarten. Chicka, chicka, boom, boom. But what my message was, what do I want to deliver as an artist? What do I want to say to the world? Wasn't clear until I started lugging that boulder around. There came a point where I was like, no, this is what I'm gonna do, The thing is, I left that boulder on the side of the road when I decided that I was gonna move back to my ancestral land, to Jamaica. But you can't really put it down. While I was in Jamaica, I woke up one morning in the winter, and I was watching TV, and what I saw was a bunch of angry people storming the US Capitol on January 6th. And even though I left the boulder in California, I still felt the weight of that, When I ride around Jamaica and I see how impoverished the island is, and I realize that they just finished paying back the descendants of slave owners reparations in 2015. I still feel the weight of it, When I see that the man who is like the mascot of white nationalism all over the world is running for president again, and he's the front runner. I feel the weight of it. So one change that has had to happen with me, which connects to the question that was over here, is that I have had to also learn more about how to just manage the weight, because I don't know if I'll ever really be free of it. Thanks, everybody.